Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. The Israeli cabinet is due to have a meeting tomorrow to discuss all of the details in relation to the planned next campaign inside of the Gaza Strip. Is Benjamin Netanyahu going to occupy Gaza in full, or are they going to do something a little bit different? So today, there have been multiple reports about Benjamin Netanyahu potentially having a U-turn on the actual full occupation plan, having alternative options. These options would be limited occupation inside of the Gaza Strip and also surrounding certain areas that the Israeli army is interested in. We're going to talk all about this in this live stream alongside the dangerous escalation in Lebanon. Just now, Israel carried out multiple strikes in South Lebanon, intense strikes. And this is coming simultaneously with moves from the Lebanese government to disarm the Lebanese resistance completely, something that is facing absolute rejection from the Lebanese resistance. Clearly, Israel is planning something with Lebanon too, simultaneously with these attempts that are coming from the Lebanese government, especially after the pressure that is being applied from the United States. What is Iran going to do with all of this? And also the new council that Iran established now that will make them have a joint defense mechanism in preparation for any upcoming war, especially with Israel. Let's begin with the talks about the Gaza situation. Okay. Yesterday and the day before, we were talking about this green light that Benjamin Netanyahu received supposedly from Donald Trump. Donald Trump pretending like he doesn't know. And, the American administration always tells you, oh, no, we can't force Israel to do anything. And Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet are due to have a meeting tomorrow in relation to Gaza. Reports said yesterday and the day before that Netanyahu made a decision. That's it. He wants to go for a full occupation in Gaza. And now clearly there are, and there have been for a while, two lines in his cabinet, a more hawkish line and a line that wants to actually reach a ceasefire. But Benjamin Netanyahu so far was choosing the path of escalation and more devastation and destruction and genocide in line with the hawkish elements in his government, especially Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Now, they're talking about having potentially other options. Cabinet reportedly weighing military plan that would begin with conquering Gaza City and ramping up aid. Is Benjamin Netanyahu going to have a U-turn? Is he going to completely get rid of the full plan to occupy Gaza? Or is this another step for Benjamin Netanyahu to climb down completely? There are multiple options on the table. So far from the reports that we're getting, the option to have a ceasefire is more and more distant. The option of Benjamin Netanyahu having a full occupation is there, at least in terms of approval. Mind you, we're not talking about success rates, by the way, in implementation. That's a separate story. And another option was to occupy additional parts that Israel potentially did not participate in or did not invade previously in Gaza. But the talks now in Israel are about Gaza City. Now, in Gaza City, the information that the Israelis are quoting is that there are no Israeli prisoners of war in Gaza City, assuming that they know. They're trying to say that because Netanyahu and this plan received a lot of backlash from the families of the prisoners of war and many in Israel, saying that this could risk the lives of the Israeli prisoners of war in Gaza, and he could potentially be repackaging this whole campaign in a different way so that he can get more approval. But the division is still there in his government. The division is very, very harsh, to a level where it led one of the prominent cabinet members, his name is Aryeh Deri, one of the religious elements in his government, cut a trip and go back to Israel to vote in this cabinet meeting. He cut a trip short. He came back to Israel so that he can vote against an expansion of the war. There are certain elements in the Netanyahu government who don't really want to continue the war. They're realizing, they're hearing what the military leadership has to say, that the Israeli army is incapable, that the Israeli army is defeated in Gaza, and that the Israeli army is facing a lot of problems. So even if they wanted to, it's not like they really have an option. And the reports are coming after direct threats and direct warnings that came from the IDF chief of staff, the serving one, mind you, because people who are now not serving, they're very, very critical. I posted a video earlier on of many of the previous heads of political and military and intelligence establishment in Israel going outright against the war, calling it a defeat, a loss. Netanyahu is misleading people, that Israel is on the eve of defeat, alongside many more dangerous things that they stated. But the serving IDF chief of staff is saying that this Gaza occupation thing would be a strategic trap, and Hamas would attack us really heavily. Israel would have a lot of losses inside of Gaza if they want to go for the full occupation option, because they've tried everything. They've tried everything against the Palestinian resistance. Nothing worked. The only thing that Israel is doing is targeting civilians, civilian buildings, hospitals, genocide, urbanicide, scholasticide, infanticide, all of that. But the resistance is there, and it's going to remain there. In addition, more reports are coming now about so many problems and so many things that Israel tries to hide the majority of the time. For example, the fact that Israel is now treating about 80,000 soldiers and is facing a major challenge. Israeli media reported that Israeli hospitals and the Israeli healthcare system is treating 80,000 soldiers, not really specifying what all of them are being treated for, but saying that they have about 20 to 30,000 with PTSD. Previous figures said there was 100,000, but listen, the Israeli media publishing these figures is something very significant. And this could also be another attempt coming from elements within Israel to try and stop the Netanyahu government from expanding the genocide in Gaza because of the severity of losses that the Israeli army has suffered during all of this genocide campaign. No matter how much Netanyahu wants to hide this, he can't, because the images are coming, the footage is coming, the stats are showing up, and it doesn't matter how much Israel and the Israeli authorities wanted to censor information or hide information, it will eventually go out. And that's part of the stupidity, huge stupidity that's coming from the Netanyahu government. The more they prolong this, the more they give people time to publish more information, change their mind, release information, remove any censorship, apply more pressure, turn against Israel, take action against Israel. So many things. If he cut it short and he reached a ceasefire, he could have potentially still fooled people that, oh, look, we were the victim, we attacked them, and he still might have had some sort of legitimacy. Now Israel has no legitimacy. In the eyes of the global population, Israel is an outlaw state, a pariah state that doesn't have a right to exist as an apartheid entity. There is an outright majority globally. And any other talk, really, that you might be hearing, whether it's someone online pretending to be independent or any of the normal Zionist mouthpieces, it's all propaganda and garbage. The populations all across the world, they don't view it as a normal state that has any right to exist. And many viewed it as such from the beginning. That's why they were talking to you and trying to plant in your head that, oh, they have a right to exist and they do have a right to defend themselves and they do have a right to go on an all-out campaign even if they do kill civilians inside of the Gaza Strip. That's not the only problem. The other problem that they have is now the ultra-Orthodox religious leader in Israel said that we are going to we're going to begin an unprecedented global struggle. The Orthodox community is going to have a struggle never seen before against the state of Israel according to him. Rabbi Lando, the state of Israel has declared war on the Torah students, and we will embark on a struggle like no other. Now they're also offering prizes for people who received a draft letter saying that we're going to support you. Their own internal lottery. But this threat is real. This movement inside of Israel, it has a very, very large capability. You're talking about over 1.2 million people, and if Netanyahu keeps on pressing against these people, that's going to explode in his face. Many things that he and his government are doing are leading Israel into oblivion. And it's as if he's sitting there pressing on the speed button for annihilation. Not only that, globally now, we're having more criticism against Israel with an unprecedented statement from the president of Ireland this time. And listen to what he had to say. Listen to this video here.
I cannot really stand in a public venue and give a public speech and speak about our language when I see such incredible destruction of an entire people taking place. Are we to watch children starving? Women dehydrated who are trying to feed their children. So something must happen. I am personally in favor of the Secretary General of the United Nations using the procedures that are there in the Charter of the United Nations to use a Chapter 7. Procedure, by which I mean, in fact, actually, that whether or not the Security Council agrees, and even if there's a blockage, the right exists for the Secretary General to seek to put together an international defense of a corridor. There are 6,000 trucks with enough food for 3 months, and it has been blocked, and it is outrageous.
So what he's basically calling for is for the United Nations to use one of its charters and override the Security Council. So even if the Security Council doesn't come with any resolution, it will not come because you have the United States there to take military action against Israel, saying that we need to use the resolutions that we have in the United Nations to go ahead with a military action to protect the civilian population. For the first time, we have an outright call for military action coming from a European leader against Israel. That wouldn't have happened had Netanyahu agreed to a ceasefire not just 3 or 4 months ago, just a week or two ago. The more time goes by, the more pressure is added on Israel, and the more people intensify their criticism against Israel. This is on the Palestinian side, and on the Gaza and the ceasefire side and the operation and Netanyahu, the internal problems as well. Moving on to Lebanon, it's absolutely and 100% connected to what's happening in Gaza, because the Lebanese resistance started to participate to support the Palestinian side after Al-Aqsa flood began as a supporting front, and in many cases, primarily initially, to take off the pressure that is being applied on the civilian population inside of the Gaza Strip. Things escalated, things got heated up, reached a full-scale war, lots of damage. Now we have a ceasefire that took place for 8 months, a one-sided ceasefire. Clearly, Israel has been attacking and killing people in Lebanon regularly for the past 8 months. But tonight, they carried out a really intense attack in the southern part of Lebanon. They carried out multiple strikes in an area in South Lebanon where they also prevented the rescue services from coming and saving these people after this attack. This attack took place in an area, in a town actually, called Deir Syrian. Deir Syrian is a small village not very far from the Golan Heights. But the attacks were intense. So we know that Israel attacks, but this time they are escalating their attacks. This attack is coming simultaneously with the Lebanese government pushing and calling for Hezbollah to disarm, having all of the arms in the hand of the state. This is an outright and absolute implementation of an American-Israeli order. The American administration, the American regime is playing a satanic role in Lebanon and in Palestine too. And without the United States administration, Israel would have done nothing. They are now giving Lebanon an ultimatum. You have 1 month to do that, and the dead end, the final day should be the final day of 2025. So Hezbollah need to be disarmed by 2025. The Lebanese president, Nawaf Salam, is pushing for that, but they're being met with a fierce resistance coming from the Lebanese resistance. Hezbollah published a statement today after these attempts started to intensify from the Lebanese officials, and they said that the Salam government committed a major sin and we will treat its decision as if it does not exist. Yesterday I spoke about the Secretary General of Hezbollah and his view on this, of course, very much in line with Hezbollah. But now Hezbollah is saying we're going to basically deny the existence, meaning we're not really even considering anything from what you're saying. It's as if it doesn't exist. Of course, there's a lot of elaboration. This is coming to serve the Israelis and the Americans. This is coming as a request, as an implementation following a request from Tom Barrack, the US envoy. Imagine an American envoy comes to Lebanon, orders the prime minister, the president, and the politicians what to do. No one talks about this level of infiltration. No one talks about the fact that the United States Embassy in Lebanon can do whatever it wishes. They don't talk about that. All they talk about in Lebanon, some people, of course, at the end of the day, Hezbollah, they have a very, very huge base. I would argue that the majority of the Lebanese inside of Lebanon are supportive of the Lebanese resistance, especially with everything to do inside of Lebanese territories. If it's outside of Lebanese territories, you might have had people who would have said, oh yeah, we're not sure, or no, outright, we don't agree, it's wrong. But within Lebanon, they know very well the level of impact that Hezbollah had and still has in Lebanon. So they have a lot of popularity. But the problem is, these moves that are coming from the Lebanese government now are pushing Hezbollah to the corner. And they're coming in line with what Israel is doing, and simultaneously too. For example, these statements, all of a sudden, Israel attacks. In their statement, Hezbollah started to clarify that, of course, the resistance is to support Lebanon. If you take the arms of the resistance, you remove any deterrence against all of these aggressions. And they're talking about arms outside of the state, but it's primarily targeted at Hezbollah because they're not really looking to disarm other movements inside of Lebanon, but primarily Hezbollah, and that's something extremely dangerous. And this could lead to an internal problem. If the Lebanese government, if the Lebanese authorities continue to press on Hezbollah to disarm, you're going to talk about a huge problem. So not only the Israeli attacks, as we can see, this is the most recent attack in Lebanon, it's going to be really intense inside of Lebanon. They know that Hezbollah has capacity, but if they're dead serious and they're willing to use force to start disarming the Lebanese resistance, that's going to be a very big problem, because the Lebanese resistance will not be disarming, and the society of resistance in Lebanon, the society of the resistance, not only supporters of a certain movement, by the way, they will stand firm, and it will be chaos, and it might lead to a civil war again in Lebanon. Now, many of the Lebanese already know that civil war is nothing good, but even with that civil war, we clearly saw two sides. A side operating for Israel, a direct agent for Israel, and the United States was playing a role, and another side who was a national side. concerned about Lebanon and liberating Lebanon from any external hegemony attempts and imposing the will of a foreign country and entity on Lebanon. This is very dangerous. And clearly, Iran is taking a position siding 100% with Hezbollah, even with all of this pressure, and even with the pressure on Iran, even with all of this talk now, and even with the fact that Iran went through war. And there were a couple of statements from the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. Abbas Araghchi said that this is not the first time that they have tried to disarm Hezbollah. And the reason is that it has demonstrated its capabilities in the battlefield. He also said that they think that after the recent war on Lebanon, they can disarm Hezbollah, but the positions of the party and its Secretary General are strong and have demonstrated their resistance. So, Iran siding with Hezbollah in something that some Lebanese consider to be an only Lebanese internal thing is a strong position and a strong hint coming from Iran too, which is if you go against Hezbollah inside of Lebanon, we will be on their side. That doesn't necessarily mean, Iran sending its troops or fighting. That doesn't really work like that. But Iran has presence in Lebanon. Iran supports the resistance, and Iran will use all of its weight to support them. Hezbollah, from an Iranian perspective, is a very important movement because Hezbollah belonged to Iran spiritually. Like the spiritual leader of Hezbollah is the spiritual leader of Iran. We're not just talking about a movement with and they clarify that. Hezbollah themselves, they know that very well. Iran wouldn't be silent. At the end of the day, the Iranian response against Israel, they declared that it was a retaliation against the assassinations of the leader of Hamas, the political bureau leader of Hamas, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, and also the Iranian official who was killed, and the innocent children in Gaza, a combination of all of that. That was in True Promise 2. And now Iran is also preparing for the next round with Israel. We had multiple statements coming from Iranian officials saying that next time will be something that you haven't seen before. There's good reason to believe the Iranian statements because they acted on their statements. When Iran said we will respond, they responded. There was a delay, there was a gap, there was patience, there was whatever you want to call it. And when they did, the whole world saw it. And no one would deny it apart from someone who has something against Iran or is trying to cover up his own shameful position or for any other reasons. It was clear as daylight the level of impact they had, and also the fact that Israel and the United States together failed to achieve any of their objectives against Iran or impose their will against Iran. And now one of the things that Iran is doing to put itself in a stronger position in the next round with Israel is establish something called the National Defense Council. This National Defense Council, and the reports came up in multiple Iranian media outlets, they're not talking too much about it. And even this report, it's very small. I'll elaborate further. They said, according to a report by the Supreme National Security Council Secretariat on Sunday, the Defense Council reviews defense plans and enhances the capabilities of the armed forces in a centralized manner. The council is chaired by the president and consists of the heads of the armed forces, commanders of the armed forces, and some related ministries. Why? Because they're not really clarifying that much. Iran has a national army, the Iranian National Army, and Iran has the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Both of them are armies within the state. Both of them have very strong capabilities. Both of them have very strategic capabilities, and both of them have organizations within them, and they have divisions within them. Now, based on this report, and although there was clear coordination between them before, it wasn't at the level required to fight a bigger war. And now they're establishing this defense council to further merge or have an operations room that is even better than the one that they had before, because they had joint operations rooms and they had statements together. They were working and coordinating perfectly, but to intensify that and to make it even better and bulletproof in front of any future aggression that could be much bigger than what happened so far, they established this National Defense Council. What does that say? Well, they're clearly preparing. All of the talk that's coming from Israel against Iran and a potential new attack against Iran are serious reports. They're no joke. From an Israeli perspective, they know very well that they haven't achieved their objectives in the war. They know that Iran still has the missile capabilities, the nuclear technology, the enriched uranium, and they still have defensive capabilities. And from an Iranian perspective, they need to prepare for that day. Israel is already preparing, but Iran is also preparing too. And they're saying that if any attack happens against Iran, multiple figures in Iran and the Iranian army, it will be even more intense than before. So clearly we have a tense situation at the moment, especially with the likelihood of Benjamin Netanyahu declaring an expansion to a full occupation of the Gaza Strip tomorrow. This escalation with Lebanon, the mouthpieces of the United States and Israel in Lebanon, applying pressure on the Lebanese resistance simultaneously with Israeli attacks in Lebanon, the Iranian side showing a clear position, standing with the Lebanese resistance. All of that is quite tense, and the days ahead will show if, especially after the vote tomorrow, if things are headed towards more escalation or a slight de-escalation after the announcement that's expected tomorrow after the cabinet meeting in Israel in relation to the operation inside of the Gaza Strip. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this video, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.